Now, another position we need to talk about is the wide receiver position because arguably it's one of the biggest needs and it's one of the positions that has changed the most so far this offseason. So there is actually a lot to go over in this department. Now, a lot of people were telling me yesterday in my linebackers video that, what depth chart, what roster are you looking at? Dante Hightower is not on the team. I've been looking at the official Patriots website roster, the official roster from their website. So there's obviously some things that have led me a little bit astray. So there, obviously Dante Hightower is a free agent, and I can see that on the list now. But you know, regardless, I think all my points stay the same from yesterday's video, so it doesn't really matter. For wide receivers today, there is some interesting things to go over for sure. This is a position again where I think there is some promise, so I guess that's the cool thing. Um, there's some young talent, not as much as the linebacker position, but there is some there, and this is a position that I think is going to be heavily addressed in the draft as well, and it obviously already was in the free agency with Devontae Parker. I guess not free agency, but the offseason because they traded for him. Um, just kind of going through the list here, we have Nelson Aguilar, who out of all the free agents last season, I feel like I'm the most disappointed in him. I mean, he kind of opened up the offense a little bit. I feel like I just don't think he thrived in that number one spot. I am curious to see if he can do a little bit more if he's not the number one receiver on the team. But regardless, I like Kendrick Bourne a lot more. Kendrick Bourne is 2 years younger, and he just showed a lot more talent. He was a more reliable target. He was more consistent, and honestly, Kendrick Bourne kind of played like a number one wide receiver last season. If you ask me, really. He made big plays, and it was just really fun to see. And then out of all the kind of veteran presence type players, Devontae Parker as well. Obviously, now we brought him on. He's 29, but obviously the most talented wide receiver on the team by just default. So he's gonna automatically just be that top receiver on the team, probably. He's 6'3", kind of a jump ball receiver. He does have some speed, some route running ability, and overall he's a pretty balanced receiver, which is something we don't really have on the team. So that's good. The nearest player that I would say is a balanced wide receiver is probably Kendrick Bourne. So Devontae Parker is just kind of like a bigger version of that. Obviously more veteran and obviously more talented as well. We do have Jacoby Myers. He is a restricted free agent. I think they put a second round tender on him. So I think we're gonna bring him back, but I'm trying to be more aware of these players that are not literally on the roster. They're more of like restricted or unrestricted free agent. It seems like we're gonna bring Jacoby back probably. If not, we definitely will address wide receiver in the draft, is my guess. But Jacoby Myers is 25, obviously has shown some productivity in the offense. I think the thing with Jacoby Myers is, obviously there is some talent, and then there's some areas where he really lacks. I think speed in route running and overall athleticism is where he struggles a little bit. But just consistency and catching ability is kind of where his strengths are. If you, it's really kind of just one of those typical Patriots receivers, if that makes sense. You kind of probably know what I'm talking about. As far as young players on the team, outside of Jacoby Myers, we do have Christian Wilkerson, who had that game last season, that monster game, and I am excited to see if they bring him in more a little bit. That was at the very tail end of the season, so I don't think we got the real opportunity to let him follow up that game, but I'm really excited for this season for him because that was a very promising game from a young player, and the connection that him and Mac Jones made, I'm sure they're going to give him some playing time this season, and if he can make any sort of productivity, maybe he's the next Jacoby Myers, coming out of nowhere and ends up being a pretty good wide receiver. That'd be really awesome. So that is some young talent there that is exciting. And then there's some not so exciting young players like N'Keal Harry. I think every video needs a N'Keal Harry roast, at least like one. I will say N'Keal Harry is, jump ball wide receiver. He is what he is, and he was given some opportunities over the last couple seasons, and sometimes he does produce, but I just don't know why the Patriots got him. I do not know why Bill Belichick got him because he's not the Patriot type of receiver. It's a risk when you throw it to him because you have to throw it up there for him to get, and that risks an interception. And the Patriots, the turnover game is huge. That's what they leverage. That's what they focus on to win games, and they're a low risk offense. They're a low risk conservative offense, and throwing jump balls to a semi talented player, but pretty lackluster, isn't the lowest risk move you can make. So it just doesn't make any sense. This team would thrive with more speed receivers, with more route running receivers, people that can get wide open. Because what's less risky than throwing the ball to a guy who's open by 5 yards? There's nothing. A jump ball is the riskiest type of pass you can throw, other than throwing it right to the defender. And throwing to a wide open receiver who has amazing speed and route running is the lowest risk type of pass you can make. So if they do address wide receiver in the draft, I really hope it's uh, a route running or speed wide receiver, or a combination of both would be even better. I think that's just well suited, first off, for this team and just their strategy. But not only that, I think it's best suited for Mac Jones himself. I mean, he's so accurate. They don't even have to be great at what they do, because if they're open by about a yard, he can probably get it where it needs to be. I will say Mac Jones would probably be pretty good at passing the jump ball as well, pretty consistently, because, being accurate is really important for that, because if it's off, it's going to be overthrown, possibly. The art of throwing a jump ball is almost borderline overthrowing it, but just to where your wide receiver that is extremely talented at catching and jumping can still get it. But if there's a safety over top, or let's say it gets tipped and then it's, kind of floating up in the air, it all risks an interception. Your wide receiver has to be great to be able to consistently do it, and I just don't know if N'Keal Harry can do that. I think Devontae Parker is a better example of a player that can consistently do that, as long as the ball can be put in the right place, which I feel confident that Mac Jones can do that. So, to have a jump ball wide receivers, I think Devontae Parker is going to be a great option for that. I think that Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers both fit that balanced wide receiver that's really good at route running. Um, really good at just consistently catching the ball. I mean, that's huge. And then Kendrick Bourne specifically is just super balanced. He can do it all. Fairly fast, good at catching, good at jumping, good at route running, all of it. And then Nelson Aguilar is more of your just, not so good at catching, but he's going to just, be a speed wide receiver, and he can get open down the field and spread the offense. I think him just being there is kind of where his value's at, because he forces a safety to be way over top, so that opens up the shorter passing. So that's obviously huge. We didn't really see him break away last season that much, like down the field. We didn't see like a Deshaun Jackson type, season where there's multiple like deep touchdowns or anything. There just wasn't a lot of that going on. I think he is up there in age. I think the other problem is that he isn't that consistent at catching. So he has to be wide open for you to throw it to him, because there's a good chance he's going to drop it. So if you're going to take that chance on him, he better be wide open. So ultimately, I think Nelson Aguilar is replaceable. But other than that, I think they're building something here. I think if they maybe drafted a speed wide receiver, a really fast wide receiver, that might be the way to go to kind of fill that role, to open up the offense, but maybe even have a deep threat that actually is going to be consistent at catching and really good at just getting open down the field. I think Nelson Aguilar isn't that great at getting open down the field. He is really fast, but the problem is he wasn't getting open down the field. But he did force the safety to be back there, so that fills a need. I think that spreads things out a little bit, but if we can replace him, we could totally draft a player that would also force the defense to do the same exact thing. But he might even be good at catching and route running and other things. So that would also be great as well. That would be my favorite type of wide receiver for them to get, is a really fast one, I think. Based on what talent is here, I think that's the most lacking type of talent, is that route running and speed, I would say. Anyway, I think that basically covers the entire group here. There is some things to feel good about, but there's also obviously things that are not ideal, and I do think this is a position where I would be very excited if they, again, drafted a very talented route running or speed wide receiver. But if they draft a guy where it's kind of another N'Keal Harry, where it's like a small school guy, wasn't supposed to go that early, and, athleticism isn't his strong suit, it's more of like he has some other weird talent like jump ball receiving, or like he's really good at catching, but he just can't get open that much, or he's, fairly slow compared to other people, I would feel like, why are we even doing this? Why are we wasting a pick on this? We have like 8 other players that are just like that. So uh, I would be excited if they drafted the type of wide receiver I want them to draft, I feel like. So we'll see what goes down. Obviously, I mean, it's going to be interesting regardless. I do feel like there's a fair amount of talent there, which is good. I feel like there's more talent here right now just with Devontae Parker than there was in the beginning of last season. So that's something to feel good about at least. This position has been improved. And we might even improve it even more. So there is just in general, it's hard not to be a little bit optimistic about the wide receiver position for the Patriots in 2022. Anyway, leave a like. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. I love hearing from you guys. And be sure to subscribe for the best Patriots content on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video.